Welcome to Charlotte Sports Today, everyone. I'm Chaz Brunt. Pleased to be joined by two men who really know the fight game here in Charlotte, North Carolina. From Fight Lab Promotions, we have Mr. Kenny Letts, and the matchmaker. He's just going to say no comment the whole time for Fight Lab and other assorted events here in the area. Mr. Mike Cornbread Allen. Welcome, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chaz.
Let's sort of go and talk about how the state of the MMA game is going in Charlotte right now. A lot of promotions are coming up, but you guys have stuck with it for what, going on 2-3 years now?
3 years.
3 years now, all over the Charlotte area, and fights out in the Air Force Base at Seymour
right.
Johnson. A great thing you guys are doing. Just tell us about how you're feeling right now this past year.
I feel pretty good. We've had we're coming up on our 17th show. First one was in January of 2009, and you know, it keeps getting better and better. I feel comfortable with the production that we're putting together. Love the fights. Love in my opinion, the quality of fighter in our area is getting better and better every year. And then the things that Cornbread's doing, putting the matches together, is just spectacular. So I couldn't be more pleased with how things are going.
I would be remiss to say you're from Team Renegade. You got to get a lot of guys out there. Just as far as matchmaking, putting things together, you go to a lot of shows all over the state, all over the Southeast just about. Tell me about the guys you see coming up, even if it's not with Team Renegade. I know you have your allegiance out there. Just tell, what's the quality of the guys?
Well, I mean, to be completely honest with you, from day one, surprisingly, North Carolina really wasn't that far behind, you know, some of the other states that's been doing it a lot longer. For example, you know, Georgia, Florida, some of the upper northern states. We wasn't really that far behind. It was more along the lines of we didn't have that many schools that was active. And so that first year, you know, you saw a lot of new schools popping up, people, you know, not so much to speak of saying that they wasn't qualified to fight, but maybe they wasn't at the right school, or the school didn't really have an idea of what the game was about. And now, 3 years later, you know, you can see the quality of the fighting starting to step up. And you know, right now I would say the state of North Carolina is right up there with Georgia and Florida and Virginia and these other states that's been doing it a while, and it's great to see. I mean, we've got you know, 3 years ago you had Team Husky, Team ROC, and Evolution, and those were really the only 3 schools that were really that competitive on a regional level, and was really dominating the state. Now you look, and I mean, you have just tons and tons of great schools, especially in Charlotte. You know, you've got Highest and IMB, you've got The Rock, you've got Team ROC, of course, you've got Team Renegade, Black Belt USA. I mean, it's just really, really taken off. I mean, it's awesome to watch.
Do you think, since it's still relatively new and it has this misconception of being, you know, a bunch of guys going out there and just fighting, and, you know, wherever they're at in a bar, hey, these guys are going to fight anywhere, that's definitely not true. A lot of these guys are working. They have full-time jobs, going and training late at night. They're either going to school, they have working families like that. How can these guys get over the misconception that these guys are just about fighting all the time? They're just brawlers. They're just, you know, knuckleheads out there waiting for a fight. How can you guys, since you're in the community, make it a way to get past that fact?
I would say some of it's just time.
Yeah.
I mean, the perception, and I hear it from my father-in-law. He calls it human cockfighting. The reality couldn't be further from the truth. These guys are disciplined. They're hard workers. Some of them are training 3 times a day. Many of them are former college athletes, whether that be from football, basketball, a lot of wrestling background. I'd say about, I don't know what the percentage is, close to half of the athletes on our fight cards have college education. If not, we've got some that have advanced degrees. I mean, it's from an educational standpoint, you know, they're not just kids, punks walking around trying to get into fist fights.
Exactly.
And quite the opposite. None of these guys, you'll ever see any of them get in a bar fight. They're not interested. There's no value, there's no honor, there's no glory in going and punching someone in a bar.
Are we finding more?
Chris Fry.
Are we finding more wrestlers come up because after they do their high school, after they get through college, there's no real outlet for them to go to. There's not like a national pro league of wrestling, like there is in the NBA, NFL. Are we finding out there's more wrestlers that are going to be joining the cage game, or is it, just have a mix of all types of athletes coming in there?
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that is true. Obviously, like you touched on, there is no professional wrestling as far as legitimate athletic wrestling goes. And they are starting to come more out of the wrestling background and out of the collegiate ranks into mixed martial arts. The funny thing about it is I'm of the opinion that it's really too little too late, because the sport has evolved to such a degree that even with a high-level wrestling background, that's just not going to get it done. Mm-hmm. You really have to commit yourself to exactly what the sport says, mixed martial arts. And over the last couple of years, we found, looking at some of the new fighters like John Bones Jones and Mauricio Shogun, who, and when you bring it down to a regional level like where we are, it's not enough to even dabble in all the disciplines. You really have to get to the point where you've almost perfected three of those disciplines to be an effective fighter anymore. It's not enough to just be a good wrestler or a good Muay Thai fighter or a good striker or a good jiu-jitsu player. You have to have solid wrestling and solid jiu-jitsu, solid Muay Thai and solid kickboxing. You've got to have pretty much a complete game anymore.
Kenny, what are the challenges as far as getting a venue? We're a couple of weeks out from your show coming up later on in October. What are the challenges as far as finding a venue? Making sure you have all the concessions, and making sure, and I'll go back to Brett about this, about making sure the fighters are on weight and have the medicals and all this other stuff. What on your end are the biggest challenges?
It's there's obviously a lot of moving parts. It's a lot more than on the surface it looks like. Most people show up, they take their seat, maybe they grab a soft drink or a cold beer, and they're sitting there and they watch fight. Mm-hmm. All the stuff that leads up to it is monumental is an understatement. You asked about the venue. That's one of the first steps. You want to find a venue that has great sight lines, great atmosphere. Preferably it'd be easy to get to, and there's so many different types of venues. You've got the Grady Cole Center, which has a long history, probably the best overall views and atmosphere. But you've also got challenges with that. It's a very big place. You don't want to put on a show there and only have 4 or 5 or 6 or 800 people show, because it looks half empty. And that's a lot of people showing up at a regional show. I'd rather put 800 people in a 600 person room and have it feel tight. So by all standards, a regional show with 3,000 people in it would be a very large regional show. But if you go to Bojangles Arena, it's going to seem barren.
Yeah.
So that's, you take into account what kind of marketing effort you can apply and how many people you can get in. And then, when you start, once you set your date and your location, matchmaking is key. Just saying, hey, we've got MMA fights doesn't get it. There's a lot of people that have come and tried that.
You just can't put it in your backyard and say, put up a cage and.
Yeah, just because I sit in a garage for 3 days straight doesn't make me a car.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got to be a true fight promotions company. I think you need to handle all facets. You have to have a great production value. You also have to be able to communicate with the general public in a way where they understand, hey, we've got this event and it's coming up and you don't want to miss it.
Yeah.
And then the other side is to get people to come back, you have to put on a good show. And a good show comes in 2 parts for us. One is I want people to walk out of there and have the argument, did we just go to a party where there were fights, or did we go to fights where there was a party? Now, the party atmosphere, that's tricky. The fight atmosphere is a little more tricky, and that's one of the, we're fortunate enough to have linked up with Michael 15 shows ago?
16.
16 shows ago. 16 shows ago. And I can pick what I think is a great looking card and a great matchups, and Michael will look at it and goes, and very politely says, that actually looks pretty good. But and he starts tinkering with it, next thing you know, I look at it and I just don't see it, and then that night I'm just sitting there laughing. And I go to these shows, I don't go to work when I show up at the event. I show up as a fan, and I want to watch good, entertaining, active, aggressive fights, and that's our commitment to the people that come, to our shows. And Michael makes sure that that's the piece that they get out of it. They walk out of there having been entertained and inspired.
I apologize. Before we go to the see some highlights from your opponents' fights they had earlier this month in September, Mike, I got a question for you. As far as matchmaking, is it a bigger problem finding quality opponents or matchups, or is it a bigger problem having a lot of guys calling you up saying, "Hey, put me on the show," who may be from somewhere nowhere, North Carolina, who just wants to get on the card and start fighting somewhere? What's the biggest problem for you?
I mean, it's a good problem to have, but we have a lot of people that want to fight for us.
Yeah.
And we're going on our 17th show. I think we've done 8 shows this year so far, which is a lot of shows. I mean, our competitors are doing at the most 3 shows a year. So you would think if you had 8 shows and you do anywhere from 8 to 13 bouts that, there would be enough to get everybody on, and that's just not the case. So we can't have everyone fight for us. That's why I try to, be as sport friendly as possible and send people to other promotions and whatnot. The biggest problem is, when I'm doing matchmaking, it's not just about the fighters. For example, you may have Chaz Bryant, who is ranked number 1 in the state, and you may have Kenny Letts, who's ranked number 2 in the state, and that may be a great idea on paper, but the reality of the situation is Chaz Bryant is a guy who likes to take people down and lay on top of them, and Kenny Letts is a guy who has no hands and likes to lay on his back till he squeaks out a submission in the 5th round. Well, that's a boring fight.
I think so too.
Yeah. The other problem may be that Kenny fights primarily for Jim Bob's fight promotion down on the coast, and you may fight for inferior fight promotions here in Charlotte. And to try to get you two in the same cage, even though you both may want to fight for Fight Lab, he may have a manager, Tom Bakley, who wants something that we can't give, and you may have a girlfriend who thinks that you should get 12 free comp tickets. So there's a lot of stuff in the matchmaking that I deal with that's behind the scenes, and then the other thought is I've got to take in consideration the coaches. Just because a guy's a great fighter doesn't always mean that his coaches are going to play by the rules of the game. We was talking earlier before the camera came on about a fighter from Renegade from my camp who hadn't been training, and his last fight, even though he won and he dominated, it was a very boring fight. Well, as coaches, we couldn't just tell him to go out there and let it loose like he usually would, because if he had, he would have gassed. So some of the times when I'm doing matchmaking, not only am I looking at the fighters, not only am I looking at where they're coming from, but I'm also looking at who their coaches are and what type of mind games or tricks I think they're going to play. So, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts with matchmaking.
I would add 2 points to that. The probably worst position you can be in on a Fight Lab card is to be a Renegade fighter, okay? Because I do not want any perception that anybody that is friends with our matchmaker or with our promotion gets an easy fight. So if anything, the deck is stacked against the guys that are fighting for Team Renegade, where Michael coaches and trains. And you know what? That's fine. If they want easy fights, they can go fight for other promoters. We're not doing it. We don't do easy fights. The other thing I would tell you is when you start dealing with a fighter, their parents, their girlfriends, and you start dealing with their coaches, I heard it summarized this way. It's like having a Broadway play put on by a psychiatrist. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics in there, and you've got to appease so many people just to get these two athletes to show up at the same date, time, place, on weight, ready to fight, and healthy.
And usually they want to do it. Usually the fighters,
they'll fight anybody.
They're fighters. They'll fight anybody. It's hardly ever a case with the fighters that matchups don't happen. It's usually the people that care about them, and that's why you have those support groups. And hardly ever will you hear me, bash a fighter for not taking a fight, because usually if he doesn't take a fight, someone in his support group feels that it's not right. And look, who am I to argue with that?
And there's usually injuries sometimes and
Yep.
personal stuff that arises. Some guys may be out of training for a little while, and maybe they took the fight thinking they're going to be able to do something,
Absolutely.
and they can't.
We used to say that, we had 12 bouts scheduled for a show, for an event, and we figured we'd keep 10 or 11 of them because somebody would drop off because they were sick, hurt, or scared. And that was funny. The reality is none of these guys are scared.
Yeah.
Any of them are scared. They're either sick, hurt, or they're getting direction from somebody who either doesn't think they're ready, or the timing's not right, or they've got something else going on.
Or maybe they have a fight for Jim Bob's Fight Promotions or Inferior Fight Promotions here in Charlotte.
I want to see some of Jim Bob's.
Jim Bob's puts on good shows, man.
I hear you. Are we ready to take a look at some highlights from Imperial Fighting? Well, yes.
What did you almost say? Sound like you about said something else, Jim.
Might have. Let's take a look at some of the highlights from. So try not to be too biased.
I enjoyed it.
Is that what you call that?
What? Biased?
That's competition?
Wow. Highlights from Imperial Fighting on September 10th. We got Brock Eisen taking on Travis Hines. Hines at 1-0. Brock Eisen, a champion with Fight Lab. What do you like out of this guy?
He's an athletic kid. Appears to be very well-rounded. He's got good cardio, a big smile.
Yeah.
He shows that right after he finishes his fight.
Yeah, he's got it. Just went into the first. Only got into the first round. As a TKO, the referee stopped.
Very powerful kid.
Yeah, he muscular, good-looking kid. Got Bobby Sellers taking on Ryan Cloping. Cloping was in a little bit of trouble this first round going into him, but somehow he got out of an arm bar. What else was he in? He got into.
He was in a guillotine.
Guillotine.
Cloping's got the it factor. We called it Renegade, the FU factor.
Yeah.
He's got a whole lot of it in him. You can't give this kid an inch. He's tough.
There you go. He trains out there with Team Marikion, with a couple of the guys he had on your card.
Yes.
So good things coming out. We'll move on to the pros. You got Kevin Frant, the Master of Cool, versus Sebastian Wojak, or Wodak, I believe. How do you pronounce his last name?
Wodak.
Whatever it was, he was in a lot of trouble this thing because Kevin Frant was just manhandling him the whole time.
I just didn't like this matchup from the very beginning. I don't think it was a good matchup. I don't think it was a fair matchup. I don't think it was a fight that Sebastian's camp should have took. I just didn't like it. But congratulations, Kevin.
Sebastian on the ground.
No.
That's the first time Josh Egan versus Roger Carroll, and this fight was just pure amazing to me. How Carroll was able to stick in that guillotine, and even when Egan's was able to posture up like that, that's just one of those things that is just simply amazing to me. And he had it verbally tapped out right there because his shoulder got.
Look, you don't go to a gunfight with a sniper, and you don't go to the ground with a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And I have no idea what the game planning there was, but congratulations to Roger.
Roger Carroll making his first coming back to Charlotte in a good while. And then the final fight of the night, the pro fight, was Richardson versus Walden right there, the Master of Cool. Not the Master of Cool.
The rock star.
The rock star. Got myself lost there, but
Keith Richardson's one of my favorite competitors.
he's a great guy. He's got a great personality, and I was waiting for him. He did it last time, where he was able to finally get a finish. I was waiting for him to do that. 2 straight fights, he's got a finish. As you see the rest of the board right there, Kenneth Pitt Crowder lost there. That was a big shock, I think, everybody. A couple of guys still on there. A lot of guys coming up, especially some of these amateurs. We're going to hear from a couple of these guys talk right about now.
Yeah, honestly, I was going to keep it on the feet, but, I mean, we clinched and, that's where it went. It went on the ground. And then once I got a mount, man, I got a real strong mount, so he wasn't getting out of that, and I finished it.
So, after watching his last couple fights, first of all, he hadn't fought in over years, so you really don't know what to expect. He changed gyms, started going to a jiu-jitsu gym, so you don't know what to expect. But I figured from watching his videos, he's going to come take me down and, work on his ground and pound. I guess being at 10th Planet, he worked on his submissions a little bit, but obviously wasn't good enough.
Well, I was kind of hoping to end in the first round, to be honest with you, but it's exactly as it planned. I know he's a dangerous striker. I feel good in my striking, but there's no reason for me to, take chances in striking when I knew I had a superior ground game.
First, when we rolled, okay, when I first jumped guard, we landed sort of in side control, and I had the arm in guillotine, and I had his legs locked up, so it wasn't complete. When I went to roll over, I was gonna, get in like a full blown out guard and mount and choke him out. Well, when I had him in the guard, he goes to stand up, he slams me. When he slammed me, all I did was tighten up on him. When he lifted me up, when he slammed me, he just set himself in deeper. And that's not the first time.
All right, so your opinion on how the fight was going to go was?
I pretty much stuck to our game plan. We weren't trying to play too much in his guard. He's got a real good guard, real good jiu-jitsu camp. I didn't think about how actually long his legs were when he was up kicking me in the face. I was kind of like, oh, he's still hitting me.
Yeah.
But class act.
Class act?
Awesome guy.
Quickly, who surprised you? Who were some standouts of that night?
I was really, really, really impressed with Ryan Clopin. That he was able to withstand that storm from Bobby Sellers. Bobby Sellers is possibly one of the best athletes in MMA in the state of North Carolina. I mean, he has an upside-down record, but, man, that kid is a stud. Clopin was a very nice surprise. Like I said, he's got that FU factor in him, and he just doesn't care. I was disappointed that our Fight Lab champion, Ken Crowder, was defeated. At the same time, I wasn't surprised that if you was back in the locker room or if you looked at the matchups, anybody that had fought on Fight Lab previously for us, they all seemed to have these surprise opponents. Not surprise, because they had time to prepare for them. But if you'll notice, they was all fighting people from out of state, brought in from Maryland, from New Jersey, South Carolina, Tennessee. And the funny thing was, I think all of those guys, all of the people that had competed on Fight Lab pretty much were announced as if they was away, as if they were the visiting team, because the blue corner always is the visiting team and comes out first. And I
hope
noticed
you're not starting stuff here on my show.
I'm not starting stuff on your show. I'm just stating the fact.
That may have been inexperience, too.
You're right. If you don't know what you're doing, you could probably make a mistake. All right. So.
Coming up, we'll
Just
have
gave you
fights
some
from
editing
Elite
work.
Championship Cage Fighting, and we'll talk about their fight coming up next month right here on Charlotte Sports Today.
Nice. No. Oops. Yeah, sure. Let's go.
Moms everywhere are finding ways to keep kids active and healthy.
Works every time.
Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov.
Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking. Viking.
Red state, blue state, vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown. Downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities, our families,
United.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
Elite Championship Cage Fighting 17 took place not too long ago at the Blake Hotel. Battle of the two bearded, light-skinned brother Dominic Cruz and Edward Castillo. This was a good fight. Edward, I believe, had the first round. It looked like he had a good guillotine or whatever the heck this is knocked up on Cruz. It looked like it wasn't tight. But going into the second round, another one of these Arikian guys and Cruz was able to get a real tight guillotine here in the second round. You see it coming up right now.
Yeah, Cruz is tough. He's like Charlotte's version of Teen Wolf. And he's an athletic dude. Look at him. I mean, how'd you like to wake up and see that at the foot of your bed?
Just the beard alone.
The game plan was to beat him up. Coach Clay told me get in there, break his face. Arikian, we break faces. I wish I could have took his head and neck home with me. No disrespect, Arikian. They was talking big stuff. I'm telling it like it is. I said I was gonna win, I was gonna win. Right. Telling it like it is. All right.
Terrific. I think one of the fights of the night. You see Hyatt right there in the white trunks and Joseph Ray in the...
Probably fights of the
That's
year.
good takedown defense right there.
Good strike. And height comes from that boxing background you guys have up there in Team Renegade. And he
very long, very straight punches. Former Golden Gloves.
He's over 6 feet, isn't he?
Yes.
Just about.
And he's fighting at 145.
Yes.
A very long, lanky kid. This fight, I guess, again, fight of the year, fight of the night for sure for that one. Joseph Ray picked up the Warrior of the Year. But however, a little controversy as we thought Derek Ray or Derek Hyatt would win, but a little miss of wrong tabulation going on with the judges gave the fight to,
that's why you don't let it go to the judges, because they can't count.
There he goes. Split decision. If they had a calculator, that'd be a whole lot better.
He was a heck of a boxer, so tried moving my head as much as possible. I got tagged a few times, but it's part of the game, I guess.
And Luke Green out of South Carolina. We're just going to pick it up a little fast because 5 rounds, there's about 20 plus takedowns. So here's about 5 rounds of action compressed in 30 seconds. Takedowns were at a premium surplus that night. But that's something, was that something that, you know, Luke Green has the jits, and you have Shane Crenshaw with the stand-up, excellent stand-up. Is that something you guys worked in there?
No, I mean, you know, Crenshaw has, you know, he's a single dad. He has a lot going on in his life, and he wasn't able to train for the fight. Not making excuses. He actually trained once within 2 weeks prior to the fight. One time he was able to train. He had to cut 13 pounds, and so you know, we didn't want to run the risk of going to the ground with Luke Green because he does have a high-level rubber guard game, and so, you know, the game plan was to knock him down with the fists. If we went to the ground, continue north-south.
AJ Brantley. After I take him out, I should be ranked #1, and that's what I want before I go professional. I want to be recognized for what I really am, and I'm the best featherweight fighter, North and South Carolina right now. So.
Get back to that in just a second, but you got another fight, Michael Leo versus Matt Cheatham. This is another title fight. It looked like Cheatham had him up against the ropes a little bit in the first round for a little bit. I know Michael Leo is the superstar, the fan favorite out there.
Yeah, Michael Leo is one of the most relentless competitors I've ever seen. I mean, he's not going to give up. He's not going to quit. I mean, you're going to have to put him away. And you know, Cheatham wasn't able to do it for whatever reason, and Michael Leo got another victory. Great ending to an amateur career, 10-6.
Yeah.
What a classy guy too. Micah is a good guy.
Turning pro next later on in the month in October.
Yes.
Second round guillotine. That's the official win. Michael Leo has something to say.
But I got sloppy and just kind of came in on him, allowed him to use his clinch because he's got a good clinch from being a judo guy. That's my downfall in that fight. I didn't get to follow through with my game plan because I gave him the clinch too much.
That dream finish, of course, it's a knockout. You know, that's when he just, you know, that one punch and he just folds all over himself. You know, kind of stiff on the floor. That's the dream, you know, finish for me personally.
Knockout. I asked him about it. Let's see what happens. The first round between this championship fight, Joe Pacheco's first title fight, and there it is. The knockout. The instant replay, slow motion there.
Yeah, people don't realize how hard he hits.
His first knockout of, wait, what, 4 fights? Here's the interview.
Yes.
Wanted to strike with him. Wanted to actually, you know, let my hands go this fight, and pretty much that's what happened.
And there's the rest of the winners there. You had Francisco Cerro winning, Josh Moore, Earl Booker there in the first round. A lot of these fights didn't go to the judge's decision, which is a smart thing for these guys. As we get ready to come back on here, you got Ryan Cloping with the win, Lucas Setzer, and Return Walters in that Muay Thai fight. We'll just sort of wrap up our feelings. Who surprised you guys? Who really showed out in these fights?
The biggest one would definitely be Pacheco,
yeah,
in my opinion. I mean, you know, he's taken on, I think, the number 2 205 pounder in the North and South Carolina rankings, Cliff Thompson. Cliff Thompson's a 3-time All-American out of Upper Iowa, and you know, looking at it on paper, you got 2 high-level wrestlers, and one of them on paper has a higher pedigree. So, neither one of them's ever been known for their striking. So common sense would say it's going to come down to who can get the takedowns.
Yeah.
And Pacheco stuffed his takedowns, actually drove him into the cage, and then just unleashed some of that renegade striking that he's getting there at Renegade Fighting System. So that was a pleasant surprise.
He seemed sort of surprised whenever I asked the question to be, what would be your dream finish? And of course he said, get that knockout. And of course, like the soothsayer like I am, he got the knockout.
Well, you got to remember too.
I'm a good luck charm.
Yeah, you may be. You got to remember Pacheco. Again, he trains at Renegade Fighting Systems. We're not the school that has 2 fighters or 3 fighters and goes around and tooting our own horns that our 3 fighters are good. We've got about 15 to 20 active fighters. And of those active fighters, he's training with some very high-level strikers, that are pros. Zach Klaus, Ricky Rainey. He's in there every day with Blaine Thomas, Brian Keller, Chris Davis,
Derek.
Derek Hyatt. These guys are knocking people out in boxing matches, not just MMA fights. So I think when he said the dream finish, it's probably a dream to him because he's usually on the receiving end of those fists in practice. So that was a pleasant surprise to see Joe do that.
Another case of you want what you can't always get.
Yeah.
He gets a lot of boxing from Coach Phil Wills. And he's on the receiving end of a lot of high-quality boxers.
Yeah. You made alluded to about Charlotte's finding venues and stuff like this earlier. How hard is it whenever you have 3, maybe 4 promotions here in this area trying to schedule time against each other? Not everybody is going to want to go pay $30 every 3 weeks to see fights here. And
that's a great point. We've got, fortunately for the fans, we've got a lot to choose from these days. And I would look back to, in Seattle when they did when grunge rock was coming out. And one of the things that a lot of these bands did that a lot of people don't know about is they all collaborated. They said, hey, look, Soundgarden's playing on this night. And Nirvana and all the other bands and Pearl Jam said, let's go watch them, let's go support them. And then when Pearl Jam was playing, all the other ones came in. And so people would show up and they'd see these rabid fans, all there. And really what it was a lot of bands were supporting each other. And, so some of the other promoters, we sit down about once every month and a half just to see what's going on. We try and plan our calendars to help each other out because it's right. From a fan's perspective, if you have a fight card within 3 or 4 weeks, it's tough financially for some people to go and see fights on back-to-back weekends. So it doesn't do the fans any good by having back-to-back fights. And so, we're trying to plan, currently we're setting our schedule for 2012. We're in September of 11. And, a new promoter can come in and doesn't really get it as far as planning and just starts picking dates based on his own personal agenda, and maybe it screws up 13 months worth of planning because in so many cases we've got to schedule and reserve venues months in advance. And sometimes, you learn the easy way by collaborating, and sometimes you learn the hard way by butting heads. And currently there's, out of the 4 promoters in Charlotte, 3 of us are collaborating and working hard. 4 out of the 5 of us are collaborating. And one of them is new, and you know what? We'll see. I think it's harder to work against 4 smart people than it is harder working with them, but time will tell.
Yeah.
I will say this, Chaz, going back to something else we talked about earlier about what we can do as companies and as fighters and trainers and coaches to make the sport more legitimate from a social perspective and not be addressed as human cockfighting. The one thing that, and this is really happening big time in Charlotte, is that the promoters do the things right. And that is one huge plus and one pat on the back that I'll give to the promoters in Charlotte. You've got Rock the Dock, you've got Elite Championship Cage Fighting, you've got Imperial Fighting Promotions, and you've got us. And if you come to all 4 of those shows, it just all 4, they reek of professionalism. I go to a lot of the fights, like you said, in Southeast United States and around the country, and you would just be horrified at the way some of the promotions around the country, you know, the things they do to the fighters, the things they do to the fans, you know, having fights in buildings with no air conditioning and homemade cages, and I mean, it's ridiculous. But one good thing about when fighters come to Charlotte, they know no matter who you fight for, you're going to be treated as a professional, even if you're an amateur. And as a fan, you get to come watch good quality shows, and that's really important.
And I think that's one thing that that is so good about having you gentlemen and all the other gentlemen, that these guys are treated like professional. They're getting the treatment, staging. They're getting good treatment as far as before the training rooms and interviews, and you got a lot more media coming out to going, even seeing these amateurs.
Sometimes it's small things. Sometimes just a bottle of water. Yeah. You know, having water in the back, having a cooler of water in the back, having some tape and gauze, or you know, being organized with how people are getting to and from the cage. I mean, it's great.
Pounds. He's a tough kid.
He is a phenomenally tough kid. A yoga instructor. You know, if you ever want your butt kicked by a yoga instructor, just go to Rikion, and Corey Von Eggety will make sure you get a good old-fashioned butt kicking.
All right, guys, we gotta be smarter about what we bite on, okay? I want everyone to go outside. We're gonna run Red Rover on 3.
What about you, Tony?
I'm gonna run around in circles, flap my arms, and make engine noises like this.
When it comes to playing, we kids are the pros.
We're eating right, too.
We fuel up
to play 60.
Your school doesn't have a program? Be a leader. Start one.
Click today and join the movement.
Packers, Viking, Packers, Viking, Viking.
Red State, Blue State, Vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities, our families,
United.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
Yeah.
What's going a long way coming up next month, make sure you find where it's going to be at, since we can't officially tell you where it's going to be at, is you guys have fights coming up on...
Our next show is in October.
Is in
October. If you want to know more about it, just go to fightlabpros.com. And
if we can flash up the fight card up on the screen, you guys have, I believe, 4 title fights coming up.
Yes.
On that day. I'm good friends with Pal. I know Salah Hamidov, that's a fight that has sort of transfixed right now as far as smack talk.
You don't want to miss that one.
Yeah, you don't want to miss. Just sort of break down who are we going to see in those fights. You got a lot of good guys, a lot of guys from Renegade, got a lot of title fights. Nick the Vanilla Gorilla Smith, who just fought down there in South Carolina. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to get the win, but he's looking to get a title with, I believe, keep his title with you guys. Just elaborate a little bit on that fight card.
Top to bottom. You could start at the top of the card or the bottom of the card with this one. Where do you want to start?
You know, I guess you really got to start at the beginning. You know, there's one thing that I've sort of merged and cooked into my little ingredients of matchmaking, and that's the order of the fights. Actually, I'm probably not even going to give you the recipe, but I will say this, because we've got some jackers out there that like to steal Fight Lab ideas, or at least we have one in particular. But anyways, the you know, the leadoff fight, Stephen Hudson from Rikion versus Aaron Osborne from Renegade Fighting Systems. Phenomenal first fight. It could be the main event on any card. You know, you could very well take it over to a Joe Bob's Chitlin circuit or inferior fight promotions, and it would be their main event easily. Stephen Hudson is a ferocious young man. He has no quit in him. I mean, I've seen his nose broken, his orbital bone cracked, and the kid's still fighting.
Yeah. He's still fighting.
Aaron Osborne is just a phenomenal athlete. Yes. He has legs like a tractor trailer, and that's going to be our leadoff fight. Second fight, Derek Hyatt, the H-Bomb. You know, he's coming in with an 0-4 record. He's been our gatekeeper previously, which means usually he's the first fight on the card, and he gets in there and bangs it out. More often than not, he's came out on the losing end of the situation, but you know, we've putting him back on the card against James Ronzik. Then we're going to go into Sergio Bolo. You know, I call him the Mexican Mauler. He's just a phenomenal young man. awesome, has a lot of heart. He actually knocked Derek Hyatt out. Derek Hyatt being an accomplished boxer, and Sergio knocked him out. He lost by rear naked choke to Crenshaw, and he's going to be taking on Dominique Cruz, who we saw earlier on the elite card. And so that, I'm looking forward to that fight. Then we're going to go into Ryan Cloping. We don't have an opponent for him yet, but anytime Cloping's on the card, it always proves to be exciting. We've got Calvin Malden from Superior Martial Arts. He's trained by Roger Carroll, the Leprechaun, and he'll be fighting Corey Von Egedy from Arikion, who's undefeated at 155 pounds.
He's a tough kid.
He is a phenomenally tough kid, a yoga instructor. If you ever want your butt kicked by a yoga instructor, just go to Arikion, and Corey Von Egedy will make sure you get a good old-fashioned butt kicking. We're looking forward to that fight. That's going to be awesome.
We got the 16150 crew coming in force on this one too.
Yeah,
we got all three of them.
Yeah, we got the Big C, Cody Wells, who always brings a good show. From Renegade Fighting Systems and The Rock. He's gonna be taking on Jason Salvo from American Fighter in Charleston.
So, just come out and watch these guys. This is basically what you're saying. If you want to see some fights, these guys are going to be some of the best. Is it going to be one of the best cards you had all year?
Easily.
Well,
they keep getting better.
Yeah.
On paper, this one's off the charts. I mean, we got Nick Smith facing Tony Rogers. Tony Rogers has snuck up on the scene. He's full circle. Martial arts. They travel. What do they travel? 4 hours to get here to fight.
Yeah.
And they fight hard, and he is good. He's aggressive. He's got a well-rounded striking game. He's got a well-rounded grappling game. Nick's got no quit in him. What does he say? I fear no man.
Yeah, that's his favorite saying.
And it's not cliche. He doesn't fear anything or anybody. He's
a guy with the nickname
Vanilla
Gorilla. He has no fear, obviously, because he obviously doesn't care if people laugh at him. So
you don't want him across the cage from you with the door locked.
Before we get out of here, because we're running out of time, we got to bring on Ken Hall to talk about everything else in sports besides fighting everybody. How far can MMA go here in North Carolina?
It can go as far as we want it to go.
Yeah.
But the reality of the situation is this: in society, when people say football, they think of the NFL.
Yes.
When you say basketball, they think of the NBA. Fortunately for those sports, though, they're aware that there are other organizations. They know there's the WNBA. They know that there's basketball overseas. In baseball, they know of the AAA teams, the AA teams. They realize that there's other forms of those sports. In mixed martial arts, the reality is people think of mixed martial arts and then they think of the UFC. And the only way that that's going to change is by the promoters and the schools and the trainers conducting themselves and being as professional in their training and the way they put on a show as possible. I mean, that's the only, it's got to get better. We've got to continue to try to take it up to the next level. And until that happens, it can stay where it's at, or it can skyrocket to the top.
And these men are going to help do it. Ken Letts, Mr. Mike Cornbread Allen, I appreciate your time. Coming up, we'll talk to Mr. Ken Hall right here on Charlotte Sports Today.
Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking. Viking.
Red State. Blue State. Vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown. Downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities, our families,
United.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
Yeah. Salad on Saturday, fruit on Friday, throw a ball Thursday. Water Wednesday, touch your toes Tuesday. Let's move Monday, swap us next Sunday.
60 minutes of physical activity a day and eating well can help get your child healthy. So keep them active and eating well every day. Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov. That's letsmove.gov.
I hate walking around smaller.
and you can't keep the beach spot as much. But you know, I've never felt better in the cage than I did when I fought John Owens. You know, every time I grabbed a hold of him, takedown was easy for me to get. You know, I just felt so strong at that weight class. My strength has always been my strength, and I think at 145, where height isn't as big of an issue, except for maybe in this fight, you know, it plays into my advantage.
Because every time you go into one of these fights, I know it's always unjust. You're talking about, oh, I'm going to need a ladder and all this other BS stuff. I think anybody who sees it out there thinks that I don't care what this guy looks like at any height. He's in there to kick some ass.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't want any sympathy from us, do you? Do you want to send him cards or, you know, shed a tear?
Send me money. I'm a broke fighter, but no. And you know, height's got its advantages, so does being short. You know, I haven't run into anybody that's out-muscled me in the cage. You know, we haven't seen that happen yet. But
how was your training been for this fight coming up here?
It's been good. You know, I still do work with Team Highest On. You know, which great camp. You know, we've got tons of great fighters. You know, Kevin Ferrant. You know, getting to work with JJ Brantley all the time. You know, but now I've also got Modern Warrior MMA. You know, with me and Pat Sweet, that we started our own place. So I mean, you know, I love what I do. So now I'm my own boss.
Yeah,
so,
I was going to say now,
sort of.
alluding to this now, that you do have your own place here, Modern Warrior MMA, and you're teaching the young minds of MMA.
Corrupting them. Corrupting them.
What's it like having your own place now that you can call your own now?
You know, it's a lot of work, but I am working for myself, so you know, you don't mind doing it as much. Yeah, it's a family atmosphere. You just walk right through. We've got a nice family atmosphere. I mean, yeah, it's a ton of work. You know, especially I go to school full time. You know, I still have a day job, and I'm training to fight. So I mean,
I guess the question I always have for guys is, how do you balance? Because you're going to school, you're working, now you're doing this, and training. How much of it is it a hassle for you, or pain, or you just say, to hell with it? I like throwing all those balls up there and juggling it sometimes.
If you'd ask my girlfriend, I don't balance it. But you know, if you're doing something that you love, it's not work. I mean, yeah, there's times where you hate it. You know, you're beat up. You know, it's hard. You just want to go home and take a nap and eat some fat boy food. But you know, it's a lot easier than the job I used to do. So I mean, who am I to complain? You know, we've got, you know, we still got guys over there. You know, I'm doing what I want. You know, nobody's forcing me into this life. I chose it, and I don't think I'd be the same person if I wasn't doing what chasing after what I love.
Well, let's sort of talk about that, the 9/11 military aspect coming up, since it is going to be a fight before September 11th. How important is it for you to represent the Marines during this fight, to put on a good effort for the personnel who are going to be there that Saturday?
You know, that's part of the reason why I got into this sport. You know, there were guys that literally gave their lives for me, you know, to live. You know, if I'm not doing everything possible to live my life to the fullest, you know, I look at it as, you know, what did they sacrifice themselves for? You know, it means the world to me to, you know, be able to, you know, to do this for the Marine, you know, in honor of the Marine Corps, in honor of the guys that are going to be there, in honor of the guys that are overseas right now. I mean, you know, that's part of the reason why I love, you know, working with Freedom Fighter. You know, they're so supportive of the military in general, and I get to work with a fellow Marine.
Doing fights.
Yeah, I had a strong wrestling background. I was state champ wrestler in high school. Instead of wrestling in college, I decided to go to the Marine Corps. When I got out, I'd been a fan of MMA the whole time I was in. I always planned on, at least trying to learn some of it. And when I got out of the Marine Corps, I had problems adjusting. I was fresh out of the, because I extended to finish my last pump with my guys, so I was fresh out of war and then fresh out of the Marine Corps. I wasn't adjusting to civilian life real well at first. And as soon as I found MMA and started training, it was a game changer for me. I fell in love with it, and I devoted all my time to it. It just, the brotherhood that you get with your training partners and stuff like that is the closest that you'll get, to out there in the Marine Corps and stuff like that. It's just something about a shared misery that makes tight bonds.
Helping the young minds out there. What are you telling? Because there's got to be a lot of young cats coming in right now. What are you telling them as far as what this sport's all about and what they have to do?
Yeah. The biggest thing I try to push on them is MMA is not about violence to me. It's about the purest form of competition there is. I mean, you look at the guys that, some guys have to talk trash to, psych themselves up and stuff like that. Those usually aren't your top guys. The guys that look at it as a sport, look at it as the best athletes in the world, those, to me, those are the guys that, you need to try to emulate and tailor yourself off of, because to me, it is the purest sport there is. There's no balls, there's no, well, it takes balls to do it, but there's no bats, no, it's just two guys. The tougher guy that night is going to win. The guy that knows the most, the guy that trains the hardest. It's that's what it takes.
Anybody? I got 5 minutes left on this thing. Anybody want to thank?
Of course, my sponsor, Freedom Fighter. Pat Sweet. The rest of the guys at Modern Warrior MMA, guys at Team Highest On, Dime Boxing. All my family and friends, and anybody that's supported me over the years.
Do on Saturday night.
Put on a show. Come on, put on a show. That's what I'm here for.
Win or lose.
Win or lose, I'm gonna put on a show, and I'm gonna go out on my shield. I will not. You ain't gonna see me back down. I've got too much honor riding on it. We just scrapping. We ain't shooting.
The 9/11 Memorial is for my 343 brothers who didn't make it.
And for my brother.
This shows the world that we can rebuild.
And that we are strong.
It's for the heroes like my dad.
This year, the National September 11th Memorial opens in New York City. Join us to honor, remember, and reunite. To learn more or to reserve your visit, go to 911memorial.org.
Real quick, we got Ken Hall. A nice discussion about MMA. We got a nice discussion just on sports right now. ACC is going to expand to, I believe, 14 teams coming up, maybe 2013 at the latest. Good move, bad move?
I mean, why not? Everyone else is doing it. Why not?
It seemed to break up the Big 12 down there in Texas, all of them. They seem like they got the door shut on by the Pac-12, 14, whatever the heck it is right now.
Right.
But this is an evolving thing. By the time we get done taping the show and airing it, there could be 10 other schools moving and going places.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think Syracuse and Pittsburgh will be good additions, both good historic programs, good markets. And I'd really think UConn is going to somehow make their way in, just because obviously they don't want to be in the Big East because they're dying, and the New York market is what the ACC wants.
Did we see the ACC expanding this quick? We thought, okay, it would be the Pac-12 out there would be first. The SEC, Texas A&M, has now officially joined. They'll be joining next year. This came out of the blue with the ACC, didn't it?
A little bit, but I mean, they just didn't want to be the ones left behind.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they, I mean, you certainly didn't hear speculation about it even 6 months ago, but I guess they acted quickly.
Right now, we're at the third game of the NFL season. Right now, the Panthers sit at 1-2. We saw this win coming with Jacksonville. Of course, has Cam Newton showed you what he can do, or is sky's the limit?
I've been amazed and so impressed. And I was high on him before the season started. I thought he would be good. I had no idea that his decision making, his leadership, his work habits and knowledge of all the plays would be so advanced at this stage. And it's going to be so much fun to watch every week.
Yeah.
Because even in the Jacksonville game, I think he impressed me most in that game, even though he didn't have half the yardage of the other two games. But the ability to get the job done when you don't have your best stuff is something that sometimes takes years to develop. And for him to lead the team down the field to victory in the fourth quarter was really impressive.
But it's only going to get tougher with the schedule coming up, since they're in the NFC South here with Atlanta, New Orleans, and who am I missing out?
Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay.
Right.
It's only going to get tougher.
It is. But I mean, we saw the way they played against Green Bay, that they can play with anyone.
Sure.
And the offense has a chance to be one of the best in the league. To go from one of the worst to one of the best.
Are we going to miss out on some NBA this year?
Again, it's kind of like the NFL. There's obviously it's all about money, and there's so much money to be lost by both teams when regular season games are missed, that if they do miss some regular season games, I don't think it'll be many.
Who you got in the World Series?
Gosh, after those playoff games last night, or the last day of the regular season was so amazing. Can't wait for these playoffs. My original pick was the Red Sox. I don't think that's going to work after they didn't win it all in September. I like Texas to get back there, and I like them to actually win this year. I think they're going to beat the Phillies.
Thank you for your time. Ken Hall, thank you. I'd like to thank Mr. Kenny Letts from Fight Lab and Mr. Mike Cornbread Allen from Fight Lab, a matchmaker here in North Carolina, South Carolina, all parts. Make sure you go out and see some of these local warriors. Make sure you go out there and see some of these amateur sports here in North Carolina, South Carolina. For Charlotte Sports Today, I'm Chaz Bryant. Goodbye, everybody.